The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf here, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, to recap what was a really fun weekend of college basketball and look ahead to the biggest games of the week. A little bit later of a slate, Matthew, I know we were talking before we press record here that there's some good games this week. Not a lot of great ones, but some good ones, right? Sometimes those are the games that we learn the most about teams, if they can handle their business or not. Plenty to get into from the weekend. We're going to start with Florida Vandy after remind everybody to subscribe to Basket Under Review if you have not already. Doing so gets you access to all of our paywall content on the website, basketunderreview.com, and access to the Discord, which features all of Trilly Donovan's insights, intel, his scoops. It's the best collection of college basketball sickos there is on the internet. So make sure you subscribe. You get access to everything on the website and the Discord. Make sure you go and do that if you are not a subscriber already. All right. Florida Vanderbilt. Matthew, that one was fun.
Yeah, good game. A little long. Took quite some time to play out.
A little long, but Florida does come away with the victory. Both of us predicted that. It was a 98-94 win for the Gators over the Commodores there. What was the biggest takeaway from this game?
Did you see Ruben Chinyulu's superstar arc in senior season coming? I did not see Ruben Chinyulu superstar arc coming, but he was the best basketball player on the court in this high-powered game. Yep. He dominated the interior, which in a way was kind of expected because of Vanderbilt's lack of size. And I guess when you're playing Jalen Washington, you do have a pretty significant advantage, but he was awesome down low. He made all of his free throws. He did some stuff off of the dribble, not going downhill, but he's starting to become more comfortable with the ball in his hands. And in SEC play, he's a 138 offensive rating. He's number one in rebounding percentage, and he's shooting 68% from the field. And on a team whose offense is not really coming from their guards, to just suddenly have your rebound-only big be a real offensive presence is such a game changer. And it takes so much pressure off of Thomas Houck. And when Xavier Lee is pretty darn good, it's funny that Keith Fland and Xavier Lee can't be good at the same time. I don't think there's ever been a game against a really good team where they've both been great. This was the Xavier Lee game. When Chinyulu and Xavier Lee are playing two of the best players in the court, Florida is a tough team to beat.
Yeah, I think Xavier Lee's got to wear 99 for the rest of the season now. Right, or at least until he struggles again. This was easily the best game he played in a Gators uniform, and hitting the big shot late to me felt like a unburdening of him. You could almost see his shoulders kind of relax a little bit for the first time, really all season. He needed that. I think Florida needed that. They dominated the glass the way we thought they would. Vanderbilt was still right there, though. This wasn't a game. I think this game had potential to get out of hand, particularly early. Florida built a double-digit lead pretty early on. The way they were dominating inside, there was a path for this to be a non-competitive game. And Vanderbilt just continued to show how good they are by coming within 30 seconds, 60 seconds away from really winning this game, where they did get vastly outplayed in the interior. But this is a Florida team too that has kind of figured it out recently. It helps that it's coincided with Flan playing better and Xavier Lee playing better. But this Florida team seems to have finally settled into what they are and who they are.
I don't want to be overly dramatic in the moment type of situation here, but it kind of feels like that Xavier Lee 3 changed Florida's season. Not that Florida was going down some deep, dark path. They were always going to be a really good team. They're going to make the NCAA tournament. But personally watching that game, I did not think that shot was going to go in. No. And you're right. It kind of unburdened Xavier Lee. And in a way, I think it might change their trajectory. A good Todd Golden team, and what last year's team was all about, was the guards playing with freedom. And that requires confidence. And Boogie Fland had that for a bit. Xavier Lee, maybe he has that now. And just the ability to feel confident from deep, especially with the way that Florida cleans up second chances if they do miss. it changes everything for this team and it opens up every other option on the floor. I actually think that shot might change the trajectory of their offense moving forward.
They said this on the broadcast, and it was pretty obvious to everybody watching. But after the game, Florida's players kind of went over to the crowd and started talking some crap, doing the Gator chomp. And I forget who the announcer was, but said that Florida's got their swagger back, and it very much felt like that. And the Xavier Lee shot to win the game felt like it gave them that. They've now won 8 of their last 9 games. They don't like 3 of their losses, 6 points to Arizona, 1 point to Duke, 4 points to UConn. Like, not bad. This is a Florida team that I think deserves to be below the top tier of teams in the country, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the Final Four again this year.
They're a 2 seed like right now.
Oh yeah,
not that I'm tracking tournament seeds, but like they're a top 8 team in the country to me.
Let's move to BYU Texas Tech because this was the biggest game of the day. Ended up being one of the more interesting results of the day. Texas Tech gets the 84-71 victory. A huge close for the Red Raiders. BYU was up 61-52. Less than 9 minutes to play. Looked like they might be running away with it because Rob Wright was phenomenal in this game. He finished at 28 points. He had a big second half. But then Texas Tech just went on a massive run of their own. Got a convincing double-digit win for them in Lubbock there. Does this say more about Texas Tech being able to get this win, or is there any concern about BYU having the game in their grasp and then losing it in such kind of obvious and convincing fashion?
I think it kind of goes both ways in the sense that this is a game that Texas Tech, pulling out from a spot where they were down. This says a lot about their resolve, even though they barely had, anybody outside of their starters playing any real sorts of minutes. To be able to come out and pick that one up says a lot about their team. But the number one stat from this game, do you know what AJ DeBonsa's on-off plus-minus was?
I do not. I have not looked at that.
So he played 32 minutes. In the 8 minutes he sat, they were a plus 15. That means in the 32 minutes that AJ DeBonsa was on the floor, BYU was a minus 28. That is not good. They made one big run in that second half that gave them the lead. DeBonsa off the floor. Immediately, DeBonsa comes back on the floor, 25-4 run. Like immediately after. And I'm not blaming this loss on AJ DeBonsa, but that's not a coincidence. When Rob Wright took the reins of the offense and was getting downhill against Christian Anderson and Jalen Petty, who could not guard him, and he was running the offense, BYU looked incredible. Richie Saunders had 2 of his threes, maybe 3 of his threes, off of Rob Wright driving kicks. AJ DeBonsa comes back. It's high post ISOs. It's backing down Lawan Watts. It's mid-range pull-ups. He had a couple of nice moves within that system, but it was AJ DeBonsa's offense. When he was on the floor, it was not BYU's offense. And because Kennard Davis was 0 of 6 from 3, and because Richie Saunders was the only player that made more than 1 in the game, when DeBonsa is the entire offense, the spacing is ruined, their flow is ruined, and maybe the plus 15, minus 28 is a little bit dramatic, but like in a 13-point game, that's the contest.
Texas Tech could not defend Rob Wright, and BYU going away from that was kind of confusing. Texas Tech's entire defensive game plan was to send doubles at DeBonsa. They made a major point in the broadcast of how to pronounce his name. Was throwing doubles at different coverages at DeBonsa and making him make decisions, basically making things as difficult as possible for him. Right? We talked about if they were going to do the thing where it's like maybe DeBonsa just gets his and you worry about everybody else. They kind of went the opposite with it, and they did everything they could to limit him. And they were like, "We'll let everybody else kind of do something." And BYU played into that because when momentum started shifting. And that 9-point lead BYU had started getting to 6 and 4 and 2, and ultimately Texas Tech lead. BYU just kept forcing it to DeBonsa. And don't blame them for doing that, certainly, but it also wasn't working. They had one path that was really working for them with having Rob Wright run everything, essentially. And they went away from that. I think it's probably the best option you have to go away from that because AJ Dubonsa is a professional player playing in college basketball right now. And it didn't work. And the inability to just kind of pivot back to what was working, I thought was kind of puzzling from BYU. And I do wonder if that is maybe a long-term play from Kevin Young there, to see just some tape to show everybody like, hey, this can't work. We need to go back and do this. I'm not going to get into the mind games there, but it was a little confusing that it was just force feeding Dubonsa, and it didn't work.
AJ Dubonsa is shooting 61.2% from 2-point range this season, over 60%. In his 5 games against Tier A competition, that's Texas Tech, Clemson, Miami, UConn, and Villanova, that 61% is all the way down to 48. He is not finishing with the same level of efficiency inside the arc against better teams. A lot of that is because he can't get to the rim as much. AJ Dubonsa is the best rim finisher in the sport when he gets ahead of steam downhill, and he has amazing footwork and dribble moves to get there. But if he can't get there, and if he's settling for mid-range shots, which Texas Tech did a fantastic job in this game, he's not an efficient player. And when BYU's offenses give him the ball and get out of the way down the stretch, you saw how it went. It went really poorly. And Texas Tech has proven in this game, in the Duke game, that they have spectacular late game offense. And that really matters if you're going to be a top 10, 15 team in the country.
I do want to give Lawan Watts a shout out as well, because during that Rob Wright run for BYU, it very much felt like, well, BYU has Saunders and Dubonsa. Texas Tech has JT Toppin and Christian Anderson. BYU's got the third option, and that's the difference, and that's why BYU's going to win this game. Then Lawan Watts stepped up and was insane the last 8 minutes of that game. He finished with 20 points, 8 rebounds, hit a couple of threes in that game as well. When he is that third scorer for them, scoring 15 to 20, 25 points a game. I know he had 36 points against Northern Colorado. But when he can get to that 15, 20-point range, this Texas Tech team becomes a team that can beat anybody in the country. And just a couple minutes of that, or 2 TV timeouts of that down the stretch of that game, allowed, I thought, played as big of a role in Tech ripping off that run to win as anything.
In Texas Tech's last 3 losses, Houston, Arkansas, Purdue, Lawan Watts has a combined 13 points. Yeah. That is not a coincidence. When he plays well, when he alleviates pressure off of Christian Anderson and JT Toppin as a third ball handler and third scorer, they're an entirely different offense.
Yep. Well, let's move to another big comeback, because that's just what Kentucky seems to do nowadays, is erase 17-point deficits. Got down 17 against Tennessee. Didn't win this one at the buzzer, but came back and won it in the final minute there. Got the 80-78 victory over the Vols. I don't want to ask if Kentucky can keep pulling this off, because Kentucky cannot keep pulling this off. But how did they do this? Because I'm still scratching my brain at how a Tennessee team lets this happen. Now Kentucky continues to put itself in such big holes it has to climb out of.
Kentucky did this because Tennessee's defense stinks right now.
It does. Tennessee's
defense is awful. They're number 9 in the SEC in defensive rating right now. That is not something Rick Barnes ever does. Like I can't even pinpoint what it is. Maybe they're getting unlucky and teams are just hitting shots. I mean, they're allowing too many offensive rebounds. They're fouling way too much. They're allowing but their opponents' attempts from 3, but their opponents are hitting 35% of them. That's not a normal number for this Tennessee group. Maybe it's a little unlucky, but they're not defending. They're not defending without fouling. They're not defending the interior well. When Kentucky, a team that's been struggling to shoot for weeks, hits almost half of their threes, once again, you're either running really unlucky or you are just not doing enough to contest shots and to stay in front of the ball. The hallmark of a good Tennessee defense is not allowing ball movement, and Tennessee had half of their shots assisted. Little low, but still above what Tennessee normally allows. This defense is not there. Kentucky, all their credit, took advantage. Colin Chandler, Jasper Johnson, who's been playing better of late, relative to him getting benched. They did enough. But this says more about Tennessee.
I think it says more about Tennessee as well. I said I was out on Tennessee in Friday's episode. We saw why in this game, to be quite frank. Only 2 guys Nate Amon and Jacoby Gillespie scored more than 8 points for the Vols in this game, which is not too out of the ordinary for Tennessee in the way they want to play. They tend to be, pretty centered around 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys offensively certain years. But typically the defense is good enough to offset that, right? The defense is nowhere near good enough right now to offset that, to your point. The flip side of that, too, if you are going to put your offense around 2 guys, Nate Amon needs more than 7 shots. Jacoby Gillespie can't be turning it over in clutch situations like he did in this game. Those are 2 guys you have to feature more, who have to make better plays. Jalen Carey, I love Jalen Carey. I like his potential. The consistency hasn't been there. You do not need him tying for your team lead in shot attempts. If we are going to lean in on Nate Amon and Jacoby Gillespie, you need to lean in to your offense being only Amon and Gillespie, and just let everything else ride and focus on the defensive end, because everybody else needs that improvement. Everybody on the team needs to focus on being better defensively. They are not at Tennessee standards. Figure out the offense, just lean into who you are, and get better on that end, because that's the only thing right now, I think, from a Tennessee standpoint, that can get them to a solid, consistent point where you know what to expect from them game to game. Because we don't know what to expect from them right now, and this is really the first time in Rick Barnes' tenure in Tennessee where you don't know what to expect from them game to game.
Do you know who leads Tennessee in shot percentage during SEC play?
Is it Jalen Carey?
It's Jalen Carey. Jalen Carey is 11th in the SEC right now. When he is on the floor, he's taking 30% of Tennessee's shots. He hasn't made a 3, and he's shooting 36.6% from inside the arc.
It's not great.
That a big man who cannot shoot 40% from inside the arc, from basically only offensive rebound putbacks, should not be 11th in the SEC in shot percentage. Kick the ball out. Well, get the rebound, kick the ball out.
That speaks to another problem I have with this team watching them play. Part of the reason why that's the case, this is part of the reason why I love Carey's potential. Again, the consistency has not been there at all. He is the only one who is aggressive offensively. He is the only one who is aggressive. He is too aggressive offensively, but that's where you need Amon to do a little bit more. You need Gillespie to do a little bit more and demand the ball, and have the coaching staff be like, no, give it to those 2. Figure it out. He deserves credit for being the only one who's consistently aggressive and is we'll figure this out. There's not the emotional edge, the mental toughness, the grittiness we typically see from Tennessee teams. That's gone. That's gone with this group.
Yeah. Jalen Carey is doing a very poor man's Tubby Awaka right now, where they're getting every rebound, but Tubby Awaka knew when to score and when to kick it out. And that's part of what made his rebounding so valuable. That is not happening with Jalen Carey right now. He has to have a better balance of when it's time to go up with it and when it's time to not go up with it. As a big man with a 7% dunk rate, you have to be more selective with your rim finishing attempts.
Yes. I do want to touch on Kentucky, because Kentucky did win this game. Denzel Aberdeen showed why they went out and paid him a bunch of money. Second half leading that comeback. Owe made some big plays down the stretch. You mentioned Colin Chandler and Jasper Johnson off the bench, what they did. How should Kentucky fans feel about where they're at right now? Because they've won 3 games in a row now. They've won 2 games in thrilling fashion, but I don't think any Kentucky fan felt especially confident in either of those games. So if you are talking to Big Blue Nation or just a singular Kentucky fan, how should they feel right now?
It's progress, but it's not where you want to be. It's not where you should be for as talented as your team is and as far along in the season as you are. Obviously, no more Jalen Lowe. Obviously, Jaden Quaintance was not the savior that Kentucky fans were hoping for. That LSU game, they won, but it's not a good performance to beat LSU without their starting point guard by 1. Tennessee, they hit shots. Tennessee's not playing defense. Let's see this consistently. Cautiously optimistic, sure, but 2 games, one of which they probably shouldn't have won, perhaps both of which they shouldn't have won. Cautious, please.
Yeah. I think you can feel good about the fact that you just basically stole 2 games you shouldn't have won. And if they did not win these games, Mark Pope may not be making it to February with the way things are going. But now you need to see some of this momentum turn into performances in the first half of games, Right. I think that's the next step is you have the momentum now. You got some good vibes going in the locker room, right? But you need to take that second half execution and parlay that into full game execution. It's been a while still since we've seen Kentucky put together 40 minutes of good basketball in a game there.
Kentucky has not. Sorry, very quickly. Kentucky has not led a game 10 minutes in any of their 5 SEC games. They're 3-2. Within 10 minutes in, they were losing in all 5.
Faster starts. We need faster starts. Yeah. I was going to say, it's been over a week now since we've seen Iowa State put together 40 minutes of good basketball. They lost to Cincinnati over the weekend, 79-70. Cincinnati's third win this season over a KenPom top 100 team. Probably the biggest win of Wes Miller's tenure to date, which could not have come at a maybe more needed time for the Bearcats. But let's talk about the Iowa State side of this because they entered the week 16-0. They've now dropped 2 games in a row. We talked Friday about how they weren't going to win games if Milan Momcilovic was not playing well. Well, Milan Momcilovic scored 34 points, hit 8 threes, and they still lost to a rough Cincinnati team. I'll be nice. A rough Cincinnati team. So how do you digest this if you're Iowa State? What went wrong?
Everyone on Iowa State, not named Joshua Jefferson, Tamin Lipsey, and Milan Momcilovic, have been awful in Big 12 play. And they need a fourth guy. It was Killian Torrey. He has been very inefficient scoring the basketball in conference play. Blake Buchanan fell off a cliff with his efficiency offensively once he got into conference play. Nate Heisey is invisible. He's not taking shots. He's not looking for any offense. Dominic Nelson is a wing who doesn't look to shoot, so he messes up the spacing. And then they don't play Jamarian Bateman, I guess, because of his defense. They're like pulling at straws for a fourth option. And if Killian Torrey and Blake Buchanan are going to be this inefficient, it's not going to be them. Because I don't care how good your top 3 are, you need a fourth guy. And without a fourth guy, your offense becomes very predictable. And for all of Cincinnati's flaws, Cincinnati can defend. And they were able to, even though Milan Momcilovic went nuclear, because they were not concerned about any of the non-top 3 guys, it made Iowa State's offense pretty easy to defend. That has to change moving forward.
Yeah. We talked about Iowa State's 3-point shooting as well, and how there was a certain point where we didn't think they could keep up 3-point shooting, but it's been 2.5 months. Against Kansas this week, they shot 33% from 3. This game, they made 1 3. Somebody other than Milan Momcilovic made 1 3 in this game. And I don't know if that would have made a huge difference in the Kansas game. In this game, I do think more 3-point shooting from other guys could have helped. I think you live with 9 threes in a game. Certainly the percentage for the team wasn't that bad because of that. But there wasn't the different options Cincinnati's defense had to worry about. Cincinnati's defense is pretty good on their own right. I think they deserve credit for that. Offense has been the issue. And they jumped out on Iowa State early, built a big lead, and that was kind of it. It was a strange game. One kind of pattern I want to point out here, because say where Iowa State's been both last year and this year through mid-January have been about the same. Last year they were 15-1. The one loss was against Auburn in the Maui Invitational. This year they're 16-0, right? Well, now they've lost 2 games in a row. Last year, after being 15-1, ended up 17-5 for the next stretch. Went through a stretch where they went 2-4 the 6 games after that. Seems to be just kind of a rough patch here for Iowa State under Altsberger end of January when you're kind of getting into the heart of Big 12 play. But this was also the start of them last year kind of going downhill. Injuries played a big role in that, obviously. This year, though, there's not the injuries. Like this year, you don't have those. So I'm curious to see where Iowa State goes from here and how. I know they're going to be able to bounce back. They're too good not to. But I'm interested in seeing how they bounce back.
One last thing. I know that Cincinnati's not good. Fine. Gisla James has played 8 games. Cincinnati has outperformed the KenPom expectation for the contest in all 8 of them. They haven't covered every spread in Vegas odds because Vegas loves Cincinnati. they have a better line than what Vegas offers in every single game because bettors want to bet Cincinnati. Since Jizzle James has come into the lineup, they have exceeded expectations per Ken Pom in every single game, and now they have an outright 9-point win over Iowa State. Maybe, just maybe, this team is actually good. Maybe.
They just needed some more Jizzle. That's all they needed.
Yeah.
That's all they needed.
Who knew?
A lot of other games took place. There was 140 something on Saturday. We only had 7 games Friday. There were like 12 games on Sunday. So most of this was focused on Saturday. But we'll open the court or open the floor to games from any of those 3 days. What's your biggest takeaway or takeaways you want to touch on here?
You know who could use Jizzle James? Seton Hall. Because their offense is repugnant right now. Like, it's so bad. They've hit 50% effective field goal percentage one time in Big East play. It was exactly 50%, and it was against Providence, who does not even try to play defense. They let you score. And that's the only team Seton Hall was an average efficiency against. They've lost 2 straight games. Against UConn is fine. Like, we were like good effort, but they were down huge in that game, and they had like one of those scrappy comebacks. And then an 11-point home loss to Butler, who was 1-5 in league play before that game. That kind of pushes things over the edge. You know what Seton Hall and Loyola Chicago have in common?
Oh, God.
They each have exactly 1 win against the top 50 Ken Pom team right now. Loyola Chicago has 1, and Seton Hall has 1. It's not good. This is Loyola Chicago's was Santa Clara, by the way, who moved up because they beat St. Mary's. So good for them, but you can't lose that Santa Clara game. Seton Hall's only one was NC State in Maui, and we know weird things happen in Maui.
Yep.
They don't have a huge win outside of Maui. They only have 3 more chances for a big win because it's the Big East. All you kind of have is St. John's, X2, and UConn. They need at least 1 for me to establish them as like a clear-cut NCAA tournament good team. Because when you are the worst offense in the Big East, not named Marquette, that's not going to cut it.
I think they will be a team that wins a game in the NCAA tournament if they get there because of how they play and the way they can throw some teams off. But they have to get there. The more the season goes on, it feels very much like the year, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where the Big East only got 3 teams in. And Seton Hall and St. John's and another team, I'm forgetting, but there were 3 who we thought were on the bubble, and they all got left out. Seton Hall went on to win the NIT that year. This feels like that. Similar kind of circumstances because of the lack of big wins from the top teams in the Big East. We're able to pick up non-conference. I think the Big East is better than that, but I would not be surprised if the Big East ends up in a spot where they're getting 3 bids again.
I think that would be more likely than not at this point.
It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate for the Big East. We need to talk about North Carolina's defense because it has not been good. 0 for 2 on the West Coast trip in the ACC, losing at Stanford, at Cal. Cal lost. You couldn't blame it on Abuka Okoro going off because he doesn't play for Cal. UNC is now 1-3 since the calendar flipped to 2026. It's not great. In that time, according to Torvik, they have a top 5 offense. Did you know that?
Not bad.
Their defense is 276th.
Ooh.
It is rough. Opponents are shooting 50% from 3 against them over the last 4 games. That is dead last in the country. Their effective field goal percentage defense, as you might imagine with 3-point shooting being that, 3-point defense being that poor, is next to last in the country. They are giving up 3s at an alarmingly high rate. Rotations are not there where they need to. They are constantly shredded by dribble drives off the bounce. Extra passes being made. Rebounding is fine. They're getting to the line fine. They're doing all the things that they should do on the offensive end. But defensively, particularly on the perimeter, things are as bad as there is in the country. We thought Seth Trimble coming back was going to give them that stopper and help things a little bit on that end. It's really been the opposite, quite frankly. They can't keep anybody out of the paint. There's no rotation. There is no help on the extra pass or the extra pass. You're able to do whatever you want to do against them on the perimeter right now. And this is an inflection point for North Carolina's season, and really Hubert Davis's tenure as UNC's head coach. I mean, he came to the season on the hot seat knowing he had to win and win big. This was a team that ended 2025 on a very good note. They had one loss, had some big wins. This looked like a program that was doing something. And now you've lost 3 of your last 4 games, including the last 2 to teams you are definitely better than, right? You have the SMU loss too, and I think you can kind of chalk up the SMU losses as you know, you're kind of on the road, and in context, that matters though, because in that game, Boopy Miller went off. That started this whole perimeter defense deal. They have to figure out that thing in the next couple of weeks here, or they might be, I don't know if they're in danger of missing the tournament, but they are in danger of the season kind of bottoming out and Hubert Davis not being back next year.
Hubert Davis, to save your season, you had to play Henry Visar more minutes. His defensive on-offs are in the 99th percentile. They're basically a top 25 defense when he's on the court, and they are basically the worst defense in the country when he is off. And in the Cal game, he dealt with foul trouble. He only played 33 minutes. In the Stanford game, he played 32 minutes, which only 3 fouls. That's not enough minutes. If Henry Visar is not playing 36 minutes per game, North Carolina is not stopping an ACC opponent, which is awful. Like, they are spending $20 million on their roster. They should have a backup center, and they don't. It's kind of like last year when they missed out on Samet Yugutoglu and they had no big man. They had to play like Tyson Claude real minutes. Get 2 good big men. Get 2 good centers. If you were around next year, Hubert, too, please.
The next 5 games, home against Notre Dame, should win. At Virginia, tricky. At Georgia Tech, home against Syracuse, home against Duke. And then at Miami, I guess you want to send out 6 games. You need to win at least 4 of those games.
Yeah.
It'd be great if you could win 5 and split Virginia, Duke, take care of the rest. That's what UNC should do. We're at a point where you need to win 4 of those games to kind of stabilize yourself. They go 3-3 worse in this stretch. Alarm bells are going to be going off on Chapel Hill. Let's look ahead to this week's games. We're going to stay in the ACC. As we mentioned, some good games, not a ton of great ones. So we want to focus on 3. We picked out 3. I should say you picked out 3 that we think are going to tell us a lot or the most about the teams that are playing in that game. So we're starting with NC State and Clemson. This Clemson team has won 9 games in a row, flying under the radar the way that Brad Brownell Clemson teams typically do, facing an NC State team that quite frankly is gross. I took my kids to the NC State Georgia Tech game on Saturday. It was their first college basketball game. We were very excited to go. It's a rainy, snowy, cold weekend here. So we're like, we'll take the kids to that. It's a noon game. Georgia Tech's in town. They should win. We could take advantage of all the, the fun stuff, see the atmosphere, all that kind of stuff. NC State looks like a broken team right now. The biggest thing that stuck out to me is all the portal transfers that NC State has, all the guys they paid a lot of money for. Darren Williams at the forefront of that list. When they needed a bucket, all they could do was run action to get Paul McNeil coming off screens and hope he got open to shoot a 3. And that was it. That was alarming. They need a win as much as anybody else, I think, in the ACC, and Clemson just continuing to roll along here. So what are you looking at in this game that intrigues you?
NC State has the worst interior in the ACC. Yeah. They're second last in 2-point percentage. They're middle of the pack in 2-point defense. They're not a good enough rebounding team either. Clemson is probably the best interior in the ACC. They're top 5 in both 2-point percentage offense and defense. They're 6-0. They're physical. They're big. They're basically, and they have basically no portal players. They are the antithesis of NC State, or at least their portal guys are overachieving rather than underachieving. They couldn't be more polar opposites. For NC State struggles, they have the weakest strength of schedule in conference of the entire ACC, and they're still only 3-2. That is a telltale sign to potential struggles. But they are undefeated on the road. Both of their losses are at home. They have to be competent on the interior here to have a chance at Clemson, and they have not shown signs of being able to do that this year. It's possible they're way more talented on paper roster here, but games aren't played on paper. And these two teams, Clemson and NC State, are perhaps the best examples in this entire league about why that is.
NC State wants to make games as chaotic as possible. It wants to run up and down the court. It wants to press. It wants to force turnovers. It wants to keep it from being a half-court game because that is where they get killed inside. They know they get killed inside, so they help extra inside, which left, I can't tell you how many wide-open three-point shooters against Georgia Tech. Like just the extra pass, skip pass, there was no help on that side of the court because they were so concerned about helping inside because they know how bad they are down there. Their best chance to win this game in any game against a good team is to make it an up-tempo game, make it a little chaotic, put pressure on opposing guards and make them make mistakes. Clemson is the exact opposite of that, and it is hard to make them play that style of game. They want to play in the half court. They want to execute. They want to slow the game down. Brad Brownell is, I don't think it's enough credit for how good of an X and O coach he is and has been for his entire tenure at Clemson. Pace is going to determine this game because if Clemson's able to make NC State play that half-court game, Clemson's going to win. This is also a point in NC State season that feels like an inflection point, given the Georgia Tech loss, given it's now January 19th, and what's the best win you have to look at for Will Wade's tenure there? You have a quad 4 loss now against Georgia Tech. Where's the win? Where is the Darion Williams game? Where is the Darion Williams impact? The preseason player of the year? Where is that kind of impact? He needs to step up in this game. You need to get other guys for NC State playing like they were in November against VCU and Boise State. You need to transfer some of that to when it's needed. Clemson is going to make them play their best game of the season to win. And given what we just saw against Georgia Tech, I don't know if NC State's at a point where it can do that right now.
Yeah, NC State's best KenPom win of the year was VCU by 6 at home. Yeah. Meanwhile, obligatory Georgetown mention, if Clemson did not lose that game to Georgetown in November, they have a top 15 resume in the sport, with their only 2 losses being within 6 to Alabama and BYU. They should have won that BYU game. Like, that's a top 15 resume in the sport, with a roster whose highest used players are Carter Welling, Ace Buckner, and RJ Godfrey. Like, yeah, Brad Brownell deserves his flowers. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Healthy Georgetown, by the way, since Iwuchukwu came back, was a millisecond away from beating Creighton and 2 points away from beating UConn. But anyway,
hey, there are far bigger problems in the world than Georgetown being 1-6 in the Big East.
Oh, but you know a coach knows his team is cooked when he starts putting the big picture of, you know what, we got NIL money, we're out here playing hoops. There's worse things to worry about than our win-loss record.
Oh, God.
Not great. Not great happening.
No.
Things happening in Georgetown right now. Great things are happening for Miami, Ohio. They pulled a rabbit out of their hat to beat Buffalo, had the buzzer beater the first overtime, had the game winner with a couple seconds left. Peter Suter hit that one to win. They now face Kent State in maybe the biggest game left on their schedule. Of course, every coach will tell you that the next game is the biggest game on our schedule. But Kent State's a good team, and Kent State's very capable of ending Miami, Ohio's unbeaten run here. If they're going to do that, how would they get it done?
Rebounding. Kent State is an unbelievable rebounding team, led by Delrico Gillespie, who is the rare player who spent 4 years at Kent State, went from 8% to now 8% of minutes played in his freshman year to now 85% of his minutes played. That's called the old school method of growing in college basketball. They absolutely can do this. Miami, Ohio has former Rutgers big man Antoine Woolfolk at the 5, and he's a very physical player, but he has not seen Delrico Gillespie this year. So this is going to be a challenge. Last year, Kent State actually took Miami, Ohio to overtime, nearly won that game. Gillespie had 12 rebounds in that game. Kent State grabbed 50% of their misses. If that happens again in this one, Kent State probably wins. But like Miami, Ohio is on multiple lives at this point. They have had some close calls. That was their second overtime game of the year. They went to overtime with UNC Asheville as well. They keep on making big shots, and this is the number 1 effective field goal percentage team in the country. They are shot makers. And when push comes to shove down the stretch, they're hitting their important shots. They have guys, especially Peter Suter's their main scorer, elite shot creator from everywhere on the floor, 3-level scorer. You said it. This is a 3-point projected spread in favor of Miami, Ohio on KenPom. That is the closest remaining projection of any of the games on Miami, Ohio slate. If they win this one, it becomes much easier. Not easy, easier to get the job done. So we'll see if they can win the boards, because they'll probably win the game if so.
There are, I think it's a pretty clear top 3 in the MAC. Kent State belongs in there. Akron is in there, along with Miami, Ohio. Redhawks have already beaten Akron, won that game 76-73. That game was at home, though. They don't get Akron again. They don't get Akron again. This is the biggest road test. They don't get Kent State again either.
Yeah.
Like this is the biggest road test left on Miami's schedule. This is the best game left on their schedule. Like, they win this, I think you can kind of pencil them in winning the MAC regular season title, barring things falling apart there. A lot on the line here, which will make it a very, very fun game, certainly. We'll pick it once we get to the end. We do need to talk about Georgia and Missouri, though. We talk about a game that is going to tell us a lot about where both of these teams are in the SEC pecking order. I think this is the one to circle this week. Both of these teams have some good wins. Both of them, I think there are reasons to maybe question how good they are. Not if they are good, but question just how good they are. No better way to figure that out than a measuring stick game between the two of them. What are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I mean, talk about figure out where they are. Missouri is 3-0 against their 3 best teams in SEC play and 0-2 against the 2 worst teams. It doesn't make any sense at all. At all. It's not like home games versus away games. They won at Kentucky. It doesn't make any sense. Georgia is a team that I thought was going to fall off of a cliff in SEC play because of how they just boat raced bad teams. Granted, beating South Carolina kind of falls into that category, but dominating Arkansas the way they did on Saturday makes me believe that this could be for real. They lost the shot volume, which is not normally a good sign against a team as talented as Arkansas, but they won in shot making, and that's not something you expected to have happen there. Jeremiah Wilkinson has turned up his game a whole notch in league play, and he's been one of the best players in the conference shooting the 3 ball, which was not something he was doing effectively in the non-con. If he can hit 3, 4, 5, 6 threes against a Missouri team that is going to sag and make you beat them from over the top, Georgia very much has a chance to win this game. But if Missouri can slow the pace down, not let Georgia go crazy around the rim, Missouri is one of the best rim denial teams in the country. If that can hold to fruition, I don't know if Georgia has enough shot making outside of Blue Cane and Wilkinson to go to Columbia and win this game.
The biggest thing for me is that I don't know how Georgia does on the road. Like, a lot of their big wins have been at home or neutral sites that were closer. They have not played the same on the road. The South Carolina win, while it was a win, was much closer than you would expect it to be about against South Carolina, but that game was in Columbia. I think the last step for Georgia, in my mind, is can you carry your level of play at home and take it on the road? Can you perform the up-tempo style they suddenly want to play? Can you take that into unfriendly confines and play at the same level? I don't know if they can. Missouri's going to be a good litmus test, though, to see if they actually can against the kind of competition they're going to face in the NCAA tournament. I think with Georgia, they're a tournament team. I think we can say that relatively comfortably right now. How they will fare once they get there, I think this game's going to tell us a lot about that.
Yep, for sure.
Let's go ahead and pick these. We'll go back to the start, NC State and Clemson. Who you got?
It has to be Clemson, right?
Yeah. It has to. Miami or Kent State?
Can you go first?
I'm going to go Kent State.
Okay, I'll take Miami. I'll take Miami if you're going to take Kent State.
Miami has played with fire a good bit, and at some point it's got to come back. It's got to come back to bite them. Kent State is a good team. This game is at Kent State. I expect them to win a close game that is first to 90.
Miami doesn't lose close games. That's where your flaw. That's the flaw.
Miami doesn't lose, period. So
they don't lose any games. That's true.
Georgia, Missouri.
This is a tough one. This is one of the toughest ones I think we've had in a while. I'm gonna go Missouri.
I'm gonna go Missouri too. I think being at home matters. When there's a coin flip, I will lean in favor of the home team. I'm gonna go Missouri as well. So the only difference, Miami Kent State game of the week for Weekend Under Review. You are one up on me still. We split last week. We'll see if the Golden Flashes can pull us back even.
Hey, all that you need for breaking even in our season-long pick streak is for a team that has not lost to lose. That's what you're facing right now.
Can't wait. Gonna be fun. We will see what happens. We'll break that game down and everything else that happens this week on Friday's episode of Weekend Under Review. Talk to you then.